During the Minecon Live event of 2019, we were shown a brand new block known simply as the target block. And now that it's been added, while it is primarily a redstone component, it works really well in a number of building scenarios. Alongside this block, we were given the Crying Obsidian block, which is a brand new form of obsidian, which was also present in the Pocket Edition version of the game quite a long time ago. This can be obtained from Piglin Trading, and it gives off a brand new unique particle effect. So today I will show you 10 build hacks involving these brand new blocks. So let me know in the comments below anything you think I missed and what would you use these designs for. To begin with, we have more of a palette, so this could probably work on some kind of fantasy style or end style or even a kind of planetary style kind of terrain. And I guess it works kind of well. Of course, it is a bit fantasy. It definitely wouldn't work in just your everyday scenario, but I do think it looks quite interesting and unique. Near the bottom, we have some coal blocks, some obsidian, and of course the Crying Obsidian, which works really well with the obsidian, of course, and it mixes fairly well with the black terracotta as well. But that's up to you whether you want to use it or not. It does have a slightly browner texture. Then around the top we have some blue terracotta mixed with the Crying Obsidian once again, and some purple wool, because it just mixes really well with this sharp aesthetic of the purple, I guess, veins you can see in the Crying Obsidian texture. And then this just blends in with the crimson planks gradiating into the netherrack and the netherwart blocks, and as you can see it just creates a slight bit of a gradient, although it does contrast a tiny bit because it is more terrain like, so you do want to separate each section of the terrain from one another, but it does still have that blending kind of feel to it. And I guess this would work best in some kind of fantasy scenario or another planet, or even as a part of your nether build. This could still work quite well in that scenario. Moving on, we have some kind of laboratory computer screen. This could be used in a different scenario as well. This is just what I thought suited best for it, and it's just like an electricy purpley blue just in the screen, looking like possibly some exposed wires or just some electricity traveling across it. I know this is kind of inaccurate, so maybe computer screen wouldn't work best, but in some kind of laboratory scenario or any kind of scientific area, this would work quite well. And I've also used the new warped roots, which you can now place in flower plots as some kind of futuristic like aerial, which kind of looks pretty unique and interesting, especially with the rounded off heads at the top. It kind of bulges right at the top with some large cubic heads. Moving on to the target block now, I have 3 designs for what it was actually intended for in the first place, just being used as some kind of target. So the first one I've got is it sat on scaffolding. Now I used a similar design for the beehives. I think it does look quite nice for stilts, but you can imagine just seeing this in an archery range. It does look quite nice. I've also used an armor stand sat beneath a carpet with 2 snow layers, just so it sticks out slightly without being shadowed by the target block. But I accidentally just shot it then, but it did connect pretty well with the block as well. Didn't mean to actually hit the armor stand with it, but I guess it doesn't really have the most practical purpose in an archery range. And this is probably my favourite, the simplest design. Just a cobblestone wall with a fence sat on it, and you do have to aim a bit high. You could have just shorter ones with just the fence on its own, but I do think it looks quite nice just as a simple kind of target. And I've also got a muddy arena, I guess, with some coarse dirt, some podzol, and some of the new soul soil. And I've just got some hay bales and fences just to act as decoration around the side. Moving on, I actually thought the texture for this worked really well with the quartz pillar. Now, I know it is a tiny bit yellower in where the quartz pillar texture is, however it does still mix really well and it isn't too noticeable at all. But this could be used in some kind of futuristic Roman Greek architecture, whatever you really want to use it for. with quartz involved, and I do think it just adds a nice bit of detail, some nice patterning and colour just on the pillars. This is more of a totem pole design, but more of a quartz or marbled design. I could imagine this being some religious area in a Roman build, and I just think they look quite interesting, and it does really blend well with the quartz, adding just that nice bit of contrast with the red against the white. Moving on, we can now place all 4 of these plants in the flower pots, and they do look really cool. I'm not sure how many scenarios they could be used in, but I've come up with a few ideas. To begin with, I've used the warped roots as a kind of stem for this plant. Of course, it doesn't completely connect, however, it does look kind of cool. While I do prefer to use something like bamboo or a dead bush, it still does work, and it could be used as some kind of futuristic alien plant, so I think that works quite well. I've got another design for this one later on, but these mushrooms, I guess they could just be used as mushrooms in a workstation or bedroom or anything really, just working as some kind of detail. And these I also thought looked kind of like Venus flytraps with the little heads. They could be attacking some flies that have unfortunately landed nearby. Now once again, I've got that crisscross fence design using the honeycomb blocks, and I've just draped some oak leaves along it to act like some kind of vine, and this could work really well in some kind of vineyard. And this works really well with the crying obsidian because it just adds that hint of purple. You don't really notice the black, but it does give a slight hint of black as well. So it could be used as some kind of grape texture behind the leaves or some blackberries. But what I think works best with this block are the particles given off it, which just act like some kind of dripping berries or something, or juice dripping off the berries, which works really well in this kind of scenario. Now this is probably one of the simplest, but also one of my favourite designs, and this is kind of like a pot of pencils, or a pot of pens, or just some kind of stationery sat by a desk. Now, I'm pretty sure I've used this design before, the lectern and a book just opened up like that, acting like an open book on a desktop. However, the main thing for this is just the pens or the quills or whatever you want to call it, just dipped in the pot of ink, or just a pot at the side for them to use. I just think it's a really nice detail, very very simple, but it works really well, and this is using the brand new crimson root. Now this is probably my favourite use for the target block as well, and these are just patterns in the walls using stairs and slabs mixed in with the wall. So over here I've just got a simple red and white design. It's just very plain and abstract, but it is a nice looking feature or painting in the wall. And this one also utilises the redstone block. That works quite well, but this is probably my favourite just because it's like a cross symbol. It works really well. It's just very simply the stairs in a circular formation like so, and I guess it kind of looks like the English or British flag. But the texture itself, it's just a really nice painting design, kind of abstract. It just fits really nicely in the wall itself. Next up, this is once again going back to that futuristic scientific laboratory style, just with some kind of flowing wires or liquid with these vein-like substances just moving along. I think it looks kind of cool. It also works quite well with the warp stems. I don't think it works too well with the crimson stems, but it kind of looks okay. But I think it works best with the crying obsidian. And not only does it give off the particles every once in a while, although I'm not sure if you can actually see it because of the glass, it does look kind of cool with the vein style. It looks like some kind of flowing wire or other substance just flowing along. It does look kind of cool. I really like how it turned out. Moving on to our penultimate design, we have utilised the particles once more, and this is in some kind of enchanting setup. Now, it doesn't have to strictly be an enchanting setup, so long as you're able to put the crying obsidian somewhere in the roof and it's fairly hidden and out of the way. Unfortunately, the particles no longer summon if the trapdoors are beneath them, but if you have some way of just putting it slightly out of the way, then it does make a good kind of block to use. Now, this is best because it's just a very subtle hint using the particles dripping down while you're enchanting. You'll barely notice it, and depending on how expensive this will be to get, you may not want to use it. However, it is a very nice touch, particularly in creative builds. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this design. And my final design, I know we are kind of scratching the bottom of the barrel here, but now these weeping vines, they actually have a use. You can actually climb them, and this is actually a really fun way of this is actually a really fun form of transport. Similar to the scaffolding, however, it actually starts from the top of the block rather than the bottom. And this looks really well as a set of ropes or something. You could have some kind of rope swing or something like that attached to a tree like I have here, and it's just kind of fun to move around with. I'm actually flying. I can go into survival mode if you want to, just to prove that I can actually climb it in survival mode. I'm not flying in creative mode, and this does look kind of cool, just as some kind of vines or a rope swing hanging off the tree. And there we have it, all 10 of my designs. I did have to stretch it a tiny bit for 1 or 2 of them, because this functionality for many of the blocks in this update, it is very, very limited. However, for the uses they do have, they do actually fill in gaps that were previously used by other blocks really, really well. I think this is one of my favourite decorational blocks, paintings wise now, just in some kind of wall painting, so I really do like how some of these turned out. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please, as usual, leave any suggestions down below. Also, join my Discord if you want to have any say in any more series on my channel. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.